it's very difficult to see, John, you're right, how other countries can follow what he's prescribing when they believe in the science of climate change. They believe that there are things such as human rights and asylum seekers' rights under UN laws and norms.
Let's catch up with what is going on in New York City. He's been addressing the UN General Assembly, by no means holding back his punches. He told the ambassadors, the delegates there, Europe was being invaded by illegal aliens. He blamed political correctness for a lack of intervention on migration.
Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it.
Well, sounds like the President's words on Europe by any past standard or precedent. To hear the leader of the free world discussing his allies across the Atlantic in that way would have been unthinkable. But of course, this is Donald Trump. A week after the state visit to the United Kingdom, the President turned his fire on the Mayor of London, the Labour Mayor, Sadiq Khan.
And I have to say, I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained.
An invasion of aliens, of migrants threatening Europe, well, with the end of Europe. That was the apocalyptic warning from President Trump. He certainly aimed his fire very widely, taking in other countries' migration policies.
It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you, I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. In America, we've taken bold action to swiftly shut down uncontrolled migration. Once we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border and removing illegal aliens from the United States, they simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not coming anymore.
Well, so let's now get the thoughts of Sir Jeremy Greenstock, who was a former British ambassador to the United Nations. Sir Jeremy, welcome to you.
Good afternoon, John.
I just wonder what's going through your mind now. It goes almost without saying, but maybe worth saying, that the President of the United States writes his own rules of protocol in a way which they take a shape quite unlike anything we've seen before. But even so, a lot of what we heard today was still rather striking. What are your thoughts?
Well, it was quite a stream of consciousness. I don't think he was making any particular proposals that we can measure or pay attention to. He seemed to get his audience wrong. This is the United Nations. This is not a MAGA audience of American citizens to be persuaded that his populist policies are successful. This is a very sophisticated audience of international diplomats. And I'm not sure that he was really getting across to them with the opportunity he had to make some firm proposals for finding peace in Ukraine, ending the conflict over Palestine, dealing with Iran in a negotiated way rather than with weaponry. So I was disappointed at the lack of detail to follow up his professed great wish for peace.
Yes, I note your diplomatic tone, Sir Jeremy, and to talk about the President in that address, not taking an opportunity to set a new course, to suggest new ideas for Ukraine or Gaza or other issues which are of global concern. That is something of an understatement. But we also heard so much on the subject of migration. He was absolutely scathing. He spoke in the course of his address about climate change being a con, being a hoax. He spoke about Europe destroying itself with its lack of action, and all of it together, Sir Jeremy, it does rather encapsulate the radically altered relationship between the United States of America and its president and the wider world, especially the democratic world. We have spoken over years as the president as being the leader of the free world. Here, in political rhetorical terms, he was the scourge of the free world.
it's very difficult to see, John, you're right, how other countries can follow what he's prescribing when they believe in the science of climate change. They believe that there are things such as human rights and asylum seekers' rights under UN laws and norms. So President Trump was certainly proposing things that are unconventional and unusual, and I'm not sure he will be getting his arguments across with any great impact, except to those who already believe him and are his followers.
Yes.
So I'm not sure this is a very significant set of proposals that he's bringing to the United Nations on this occasion.
Yes, and again, so Jeremy, if you'd been in that hall as Britain's ambassador to the United Nations, maybe providing some sort of, report and assessment afterwards, back to the Foreign Office and through the Foreign Office back to the British government. I wonder what it would say. I mean, what you're saying now is a great deal of what we've heard from President Trump. In its way, to many ears, it will be somewhat shocking, but I think you're saying it's priced in. You can guess what's coming our way. It's just the pitch and the tone which rather catches you slightly off guard.
The trouble is, the US president doesn't just produce rhetoric. He has power in his hands to do things and affect other people. The removal of US development aid from Africa and from other poorer countries around the world is a catastrophe. The removal of any interest in the future of Afghanistan and the women in Afghanistan to live a normal life is a catastrophe. President Trump often has certain good ideas in his mind, which, if you strip away the extremist rhetoric and the Trump style of delivery, have some point to them. In the energy field, you can't just move to renewables without keeping some oil and gas. You need an and approach, not an either-or approach. He's gone too far against renewables. You need some renewables, you need some oil and gas, and increasingly decarbonize. You listen to him, I think, John, criticize China for continuing to use coal, and India and other nations for continuing to use coal, and then had to say, well, of course, climate change is a hoax. Well, that is an inconsistency. You have to see beyond. So nations like the UK have to work with the US where they find sensible proposals to work with, where they find some mutual consonance, and allow Trump to have his rhetoric and his style of speaking that deal with the serious underlying arguments that he has in there somewhere, if you can reach them.
Yes, I mean, one of his messages was when he called on the countries of the world to cease buying Russian energy, and that, I guess, Donald Trump has presented today and previously as the benchmark on which he would decide whether to impose further sanctions himself on Russia over the war in Ukraine. But of course, that was the appeal, that was the demand, but it will not and cannot be met. Certainly will not be met by some European countries. I'm thinking of Hungary, I'm thinking of Slovakia, and Europe itself is still a buyer of liquid natural gas. It's being described by some as an excuse by the president for not taking stronger action against Russia. Is that your view?
I think it's partly that. I think he would like Europe to stop, he would like India to stop buying anything from Russia. But then, he sends a different signal when he meets President Putin in Alaska, and gives him a red carpet. So I think many people around the world are having trouble with the inconsistency of what Trump is proposing, and the lack of follow-up action, hard action, to produce results from what he seems to want. So we're still waiting for the action that carries results with it.
It is worth noting, Sir Jeremy, isn't it, that some of what President Trump says can also be said to have a germ of validity. He described the UN as basically a busted flush, contributing nothing, responsible for its own lack of authority. And it is difficult to argue that the United Nations, Jeremy, does suffer from an inadequate resources, a lack of authority. It is still bound by a post-World War II structure with its system of vetoes and membership of the Security Council.
Well, I'm going to push back against that a bit, John, because the United Nations, in its politics and addressing conflict, is the work of member states working together at the UN.
Yeah.
At least they're talking and not shooting at each other. They're talking under UN principles and norms. But it's the nation states who have to come to an agreement, not the UN Secretary General. He's not the one with the power. He's not the one with the money. Nation states have to give the UN the money. The UN is an enormously popular institution amongst young people now because it expresses the norms of a cooperating and open world, and young people like that. But when nation states don't pay their dues, and when nation states in the Security Council don't agree with each other, the UN Secretary General cannot do anything about that. He's stymied. So let's be clear who we're talking about when we just refer to the UN.
Jeremy Greenstock. So Jeremy Greenstock, former British ambassador to the United Nations, thank you so much for joining us.